Welcome. My name's Steve. I'm the head of marketing at Teamed, and today I'm here with Anthony, who's our CEO and co-founder. And today we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're talking about something that's in the news a lot and we're all aware of, and it's the conflict and the wider implications of things that are happening around, from the local region to sort of the whole global impact on the economy. Probably at the moment you fall into one or two camps. Either you're in the camp of, I don't really think this matters to me, it's not relevant, or you're kind of maybe worried about the situation and you've got questions. And hopefully we're going to be able to give you both something that you can take away from this, why things that you might need to be aware of when geopolitical risks like this happen, or if you've got concerns, we'll be able to answer those, or at least sort of kind of guide you in the right direction, what you need to talk about and who to talk to. So we're going to talk about the Iran conflict as a start, but the bigger conversation is about things that are going to happen and the ripple effects that these sort of things happen. So at the moment, it's the Iran conflict, but there's a lot of instability at the moment in the world, but it could also be the raft of new regulations coming in due to AI and technology. It could be the tariffs, that was the big news earlier last year. And those things, they all have a similar impact and things that we need to be aware of, and why you need a partner when you're looking at your global employment that you can trust. Well, enough from me anyway. I'll kind of go over to Anthony now, just put you on the spot a little bit, Anthony, but if you just want to give yourself a quick intro and about you and Team, just a minute's worth.
Yeah, so I'm Anthony, as you said, CEO and co-founder of the company of Teamed. We created the company slightly before the COVID, so at a time where the world was a little bit more stable. Then we went through instability, then it became stable again, and then obviously, as you're saying, we're going through difficult times now. As a company, Teamed, we are a global platform that helps companies employ staff around the world, whether that's through an EOR type of setup, or whether that's through contractors or through opening their legal entity. We support companies in all aspects of their international employment.
The 2020 has been referred to as a boot camp for business owners, because everything's been thrown at you over the last, what are we now, 5 years. So most of our audience, most people don't have employees directly in Iran who are directly impacted by this conflict. So why would they need to be paying attention to something like this going on globally?
Whether they pay attention to it or not, obviously, is their choice. And you were speaking about the two camps. I think there's a little bit more color to it, but fundamentally, the problem is not necessarily what is happening in one region of the world, however big that is, like Iran and Middle East in general is right now, but it's all the rippling effects of all of this. So it's everything around instability, we mentioned about it, everything around inflation that has impact on the strategy of our clients, what they do, what they don't do, that has an impact on their employees and therefore the people we employ for them, because that might decide the country where they decide to live in, depending on cost of living. But it has also direct impact in terms of movement. Very good cases, we've had hundreds of employees who are going through Teamed for our clients who are based in places like Dubai, and with the rippling effect of what is happening in Iran, they've been moving to other countries and obviously seeking support from us in terms of the compliance of doing so and trying to find setups to make it happen. So those are indirect impact, and obviously we've got also everything around payment infrastructures, which are impacted, whether they are Middle East directly related and their relation with the US will be stressed or at least tested throughout this period. And the last thing is sanctions. Obviously, we as a regulated entity or company, we are very much under scrutiny for everything around what we do with sanctions countries. And obviously, the more there is or there are conflicts around the world, whether in Iran or somewhere else, there always are subsequent effect on sanctions, which in turn have impact to us and to our clients.
Okay, yeah, no, brilliant. So, I mean, are you seeing that there's a lot going on with that kind of movement of people around from one region to another, or at least people are asking questions about it, sort of like?
No, we do have actual movements like crazy. And I was taking Dubai as a good example because this is an area which is very well known for people, I don't want to escaping, tax obligations in some form. And obviously, with the insecurity in the region, they have the flexibility to go somewhere else, being back in their own country, being to Bali, where it's a bit easy for people like their own nannies in Dubai that can actually go into places like Bali. So the point to your question is there's a lot of movement already happening, and there's a lot of people saying, okay, what setup can I be in through Teamed to make sure I remain compliant, to make sure I don't increase my exposure to my tax obligations. So there's a lot of activity going on, not only in Dubai, but I'm picking Dubai because that's where we got the most movement as a result of this Iran situation.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So, I mean, I mentioned at the beginning that this is just one incident that's kind of going on at the moment. What other things are going across your desk at the moment that kind of fit into this geopolitical risk?
Millions of things is the answer. I mean, in our line of work, the obvious thing is the evolution of employment legislation, and literally, given that we're present around the world, we literally have changes every week. So every week we have to be on top of things, making sure that not only we know about what's coming up, but we have informed our clients about what's coming up, what are the implications of those changes, and for them in terms of their current employment or their future decisions of employment. A very good example is with the 2nd of April yesterday, India introduced a major labor reform, which I think they blended something like 29 outdated laws, employment laws, into 4 new codes. There are changes in the wage structure. There are changes in the way we can make sure that employees don't get suddenly tax bill that increases as a result of it. So there's a ton of things like that happening every single week. Obviously, India and yesterday is just a coincidental time, and it's a big country and the changes are massive. But those changes happen every single week in one country somewhere in the world. So this is a big one that is always on the forefront, obviously, of our desks as a company. And I was mentioning sanctions. I briefly mentioned sanctions, as a consequences of what's going on in Iran and the region. But besides the obvious, I don't know what to call it, but comprehensive sanctions in countries like Russia, now Iran, or even before actually, Syria, North Korea, Cuba, those type of countries which are like very much sanctioned and across the world. We currently, as a company, we maintain a list of sanctioned countries which are either partially sanctioned or can be sanctioned by certain countries but not others, or certain region but not others. And we've got on that list currently around 30, I think. So we have to maintain those type of things because that matters to ourselves, obviously, to our ability to deliver the service. That matters a lot to our clients to make sure that we remain compliant every single day. So these are the type of things which are somewhat related to the topic of today, which are on our desk every day as a company.
It sounds massively complicated. I mean, obviously it's what Team does, it's what you do, it's in your blood, but how does someone keep on top of all this? So what happens if I don't? I'm a HR manager, I'm maybe using an EOR, or maybe sort of managing it myself, but I've got people across 5 different countries. What happens if I miss one of these?
Obviously, I don't want to be threatening or coming out with like catastrophic assessment, but the reality is not nice. The reality is you miss like a change of rule with an employee in one country out of 5, as you mentioned, or out of 30 even, and you can end up in thousands and thousands and thousands of liability, whether directly to the employee or to the tax office, or even worse, in the case of a termination, a very nasty termination. We've had situations like that of employees coming from and clients coming from the competition, where they went through horrendous situations where change of regulation were not anticipated, not well taken into account during an employment, and ended up in a bloodbath in terms of termination or liability for the employer. And so obviously that's that's extremely critical, let's say, to stay on top of everything which is changes.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you saying it reminds me of something that someone was saying about the Netherlands, where even it's not necessarily new rules; it's just knowing the rules are so different in every country, and if you kind of miss following the right procedure for making someone redundant, you can get caught up in a lot of red tape as well. So it's.
I mean, I don't know what you meant about Netherlands. I don't know if you meant about the 2-year sickness, which an employer have to pay for, and so. But it's valid.
It was exactly the 2-year sickness. Yes.
Every single country, I've got these type of things.
Brilliant, thank you. So just going back to kind of stuff that's going across your desk at the moment, have you got any specific examples of, obviously not giving out too much information about the client or anything like that, but that you can kind of share with us either from now or historically that you've had to deal with where geopolitical situations change quickly, so we've had to move and support them?
I don't know. So you're speaking about like a situation a little bit complex, like cross-border, where we would have to address a certain a complex situation, essentially, right?
Yes, where it's come around.
So those situations happen every day. Everything around right to work in a given country is always extremely complex. Everything around visas, everything around fluctuation of currencies is extremely complex, and we have situations where we're able to avoid either the risk on the employer side or the loss on the employee side when currencies fluctuate a lot by hedging or by changing the currency of payment or those type of things. So those happen every day. But one other thing that you might remember, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that was shared in our team meeting. We had a really, really interesting situation where we had a client. It's an accounting client based out of the UK, and they had a Philippines employee who was married to a US military person, went back to the US for a short period of time, and got deployed in Italy. And that person is Filipino, married to a US person, moved a little bit for the US, but then needed to work out of Italy because the client absolutely wanted to keep them. They were critical to their business. And it was obviously, the client was really desperate because they really didn't see how they would be doing things. And after a lot of research and a lot of discussions with our various lawyers in the various countries, it turns out that there actually is, believe it or not, a military visa for which is offered by Italy in those type of situations. So we were able to actually set up these employment in Italy for a Filipino person through a US military visa on a US contract, and all of this is absolutely compliant. So just, I guess, I don't know how much of an example it is compared to what you were looking for, but essentially it was kind of an example of how complex a situation can be when we have people moving around, whether they are related to complex situations like Iran, or whether they are related to a personal situation like the example I just shared.
I mean, absolutely. And it wasn't necessarily 100% what I was after, but it kind of just shows the complexity of what you're dealing with. If you're a HR manager and suddenly have thrown that situation on your plate, it's kind of you're suddenly having to become a geopolitical solicitor and those side of things. You mentioned currencies as well, sort of there. What can you go into a little bit more about, because I'd imagine that's something that can worry people quite a lot. Suddenly if a currency drops or currency skyrockets, like we've seen happen in various different countries over the the last few years. How have we managed those situations?
So it's complex because there are some currencies that obviously everybody look at, but in real terms they don't fluctuate like in a major way unless you have like big teams. But usually when a company has got a huge team in a country, they don't go through teams, so they would be handling that directly themselves. But in a case where you have, let's say, a dozen employees in a given country, when we're speaking about currencies like US to euro, euro to GBP, those type of things, there is fluctuation, but it's not massive and doesn't change the the whole picture. But there are other countries where, whether that's related to a conflict like we've got in Iran, or like there was, with Israel in Palestine, and those type of things, where the currency fluctuates a lot. We've got countries like also South Africa, where the currency fluctuates a lot. So back to your question about how we handle it. So it's very often on a case-to-case basis. We as a company, we are very consultative in terms of working with our clients. So depending on what is critical for them, what is important for them, we can address things. We have situations where the employee, if it's compliant in a country, gets paid in a different currency, if that's something they want. We have situations where we've been paying in the local currency. So we have the spectrum of option for us to address those type of currency issues. We also have situations where an employee is paid in half in a currency, half in another. We have situations where when it's allowed in a country, because that's not always the case, we can peg the salary to the exchange rate, so that both the employee and the employer can share the actual impact. So there are different type of situations, and it all depends on whether the employee is the driver to make things happen and is very aware of the situation, or whether that's the employer. And in that case, usually the employer takes most of the risk. And of course, we have also our ways internally to hedge the fluctuation of currency when we can. So there's a broad range of options, as long as you are open to the different payment capabilities.
Kind of part of what you said there leads into the next one. You said about a consultative approach. They kind of meet the customer where they are and understand their challenges. What does someone, if they're out there and they're worried about their current situation, they've got concerns and worries about how their setup is done, what questions should they be asking themselves or their current provider to make sure that these things are on the radar?
I guess a few things. I would say if they have a current provider, the first thing, well, there are probably two things that should be checking. The first thing is their provider, is their partner proactive or reactive? We're back to the discussion we were speaking about the changes that keep happening, whether they are on the actual employment regulation, or whether they are on the payment capabilities, or they are on the banking infrastructure, or visa situation, all those type of things. If their partner is not on top of things, then obviously it's a bad news, because that means they would have to play catch up. They would be exposed to bigger risk. So really, the proactiveness versus the reactiveness is a very good gauge or assessment to see if they are exposed to further risks. An easy one is to check whether their partner have got a named person who knows them. At Team, it's something that has been very important since the beginning. We can our clients can reach us by telephone. They have a dedicated person they can reach out, not convoluted process to be able to speak to somebody, but an actual person that responds and is available, maybe not 24/7, but for sure 16 or 18. So these really would be two key aspects to look if you want to have an opinion on whether you have a partner who's more of a processor or more somebody who's thinking ahead, which is really important. And another aspect, which is not like directly related, but I think would be a good indication about whether they already have a partner or not, but and depending on what they're looking for, but the flexibility that we provide as Team, and obviously it's a little bit of a salesy type of comment here, but looking for flexibility in their partner is a good also indicator about how things can be controlled, number one, and can be addressed when they go south. And simple examples like options. We pride ourselves at Team to be very consultative as an approach. And if a clients come to us with a setup idea in mind, and we actually know that's not necessarily optimum for them, we will not push for that solution just because it's giving us revenue, right? So there are situations where a B2B contract is actually absolutely acceptable, and makes a lot of sense. There are countries where it's less regulated, countries where it's extremely highly regulated. So we will be providing that support. So that offering that flexibility rather than saying, okay, that's one size fit all type of solution, that's a good indicator, especially in times where there's a lot of instability around. Around the flexibility idea, everything around the clauses, right? Most of our clients have been spending a lot of time developing their own contract. They've been paying attention to some of the clauses. They want them as much as possible applied in other countries. We don't guarantee that. We can't guarantee it's possible, or we don't guarantee it's compliant in every single country they need to employ in. But the reality is we try. And that flexibility makes a big difference when something goes wrong, or that makes a big difference when the client wants to deploy a certain culture around their employees, regardless of where they're located. So that would be a second aspect of flexibility. And I guess the third aspect, which is, I know a little, most of the client and employees enjoy that side of our service, is everything around tax optimization. So, I was mentioning India a little earlier in this discussion. There are countries where it's commonly understood how the contract is structured to minimize the taxes, both for the employer and the employees. But there are plenty of countries, and Portugal comes to mind, but there are plenty of countries around the world where there are plenty of levers that can be used by the employer to minimize the tax bill in an absolute 100% compliant way. And, again, having that type of flexibility gives you an indication of whether your partner is actually servicing you as a business through thick and thin, and or optimize essentially your situation for your needs as opposed to optimize for theirs. So this would be really, I guess, big thing I would think about when, I guess, assessing the need and the type of partners to work with.
Thank you very much. Just want to pull out the last thing that you mentioned there, just because I guess one of the impacts that, we're not geopolitical experts and that we're not going to pretend to be, but one of the impacts of this could be, companies not having as much money to spend, having to think about their bottom lines, their revenue and things like that. So it's not what we sell our business on, the cost arbitrage of applying abroad and things like that. It's not a thing that we push. However, interesting you sort of springing it up, that it is something that people can look at to try and balance the books a little bit better by saving on tax payments and things like that, around looking at countries like Portugal or
and we offer that service. So basically, we have plenty of situations where the client knows who they want to recruit, and that person is located in country A, and that's what we execute, and we try to optimize for it. But we have also situations where we've got clients, again, consulting us, and or prospect consulting us and say, look, I'm trying to build a small team. I would like them to be within X hours of my own country. I would like to optimize for quality, or I would have to optimize for cost, or I would have to optimize for something else. And so because we are having that consultative approach, because we are having that 360 degrees approach towards the service, we can provide these services. So we can advise and say, if you're going if the type of profile you're looking for is XYZ, we suggest looking for these type of countries, because we know there's an abundance of those profiles, and they happen to be in a situation which is going to cost less than in your own country, for example. But as you said, cost is rarely the arbitrage lever for our clients. But when it comes to, okay, am I going to recruit? I want somebody located in the Iberic areas. Is it Spain or Portugal? Then we can advise sometimes, depending on the profile of the person they're trying to recruit.
Brilliant, excellent. Thanks very much, Anthony. That's, sort of the only questions I've got left. The last one, I guess, is that, is there a message you want to leave? It doesn't have to be a sales pitch to teams or anything like that, but is there a message you want to leave people with, to, if they're worried, if they're concerned about the current situation? It could just be things aren't as bad as you think they are, that, you've seen it before, and things will improve on the other side.
Yeah, well, it's going to have to be a salesy answer, but basically the answer is talk to us. But joke aside, the reality is, I've mentioned before, as a company, we've got a very consultative approach, and we don't push for any solution. We offer the breadth of solution, and if anybody is concerned whether that's with their own exposure because of the geopolitical and the changes that are happening, whether that's because they're paying a huge amount of fees which are hidden, that they were not told at the beginning of their contract, whether that's because they're not sure about the advice they're being given or whatever. Talk to us. Our global employment advisors can give a hand. It's just a conversation. It's not a sales pitch to start with, and we can advise, and it doesn't cost a penny for them. Of course, they can make that call, that directly or not, but we're here to help.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Anthony. So, there's a lot going on in the world, there always is, but if you've got a strong partner beside you to support you and consult with you, then you're better armed going forward. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time today. And thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you.